r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Sean_M_Gleason. I applied for a job as a security guard. I didn't realize WFH means work from hell. Part 1. I hope this reaches the right audience. I need people to understand that my security job is not like any you have heard of before. I am currently in the break room as I write this during my 4th week on the job. I thought I was signing up for a work from home role, but it turned out to be work from hell. You're probably wondering why I am still here giving my predicament, and if you thought it was just for the money, you would be correct. Money was what brought me here, but as I tell you my story, you will come to learn that there are ways to keep someone under your control. I haven't had so much disposable income in my life, but some things money can't buy. I hear the screams of a colleague from the med room as his eyes and face melt from the acidic saliva he came in contact with out on duty. With the dangers of the job and the otherworldly working conditions, I feel like I have some stories that will help you think twice before chasing dollar signs. Just be aware, these may stop at any time due to my untimely demise. My name is Thomas. I have been known as Tommy for as long as I can remember. I had the usual childhood in my hometown. 2 hard-working parents who provided what they could while I took everything for granted. I coasted through school and was lucky to get out without repeating too many classes. I spent some time in the army once I left high school. Went through basic training, was never top of any class, but I got by. I had some great instructors, who pushed me further than anything I have ever done before. I enjoyed my time there and the people in my company were supportive, but on my second tour things went wild. For the purpose of the story, we will leave it with an honorary discharge with a recommendation to spend some time getting some therapy and a slow reintegration to society. The things I saw over there would change a man. Once I could gather my thoughts into some form of coherence, I decided I was going to live the American dream, and I started my own construction business. I was going to subcontract the work and retire by 45. That failed miserably. I spent the next few years just existing, doing odd security jobs here and there. Working the door at nightclubs on the weekend. Not the existence I had imagined for myself. One busy weekend in the middle of July, I was working the door of a nightclub called Club Rouge. An extremely disturbing place, but that's a story for another day. Tony was on with me that night, a big burly man from Australia. He had shoulders like bowling balls and a nose that had met too many solid objects. He said he played rugby back home, although the scars on his face had more resemblance to knife wounds. We were doing our usual routine as instructed by the owners, keeping the ratio of 2 women to 1 man, but young brunettes were giving priority. Like I said, that place had bad intentions. Did I tell you about the ad on the radio I heard the other night going home? Tony asked. This new place is looking for security guards to work remotely. Pay sounded too good to be true though. It always is, I laughed. That's how they lure you in. You're probably right, but have a listen on your way home. What could be worse than working these doors? Tony grinned. After our shift finished, I headed to my car to start my commute. The roads at this time of night were always quiet. I needed something to keep my mind focused, so I turned on the radio. I usually listen to some podcasts, but Tony had sparked my curiosity. The station came to life as the late night DJ was closing out the last song. That was our first local submission of the week, a young band called Parmesan Wasps. I'll be back after this short break and then we're straight into the weekly dilemma. I have been ghosted by the last 5 girls I met at the club. Is it me or is there something else going on? I don't know about you folks, but I think the texter might need to take a look in the mirror. The ads came on, the usual for this time of night. Keith Stevenson, divorce attorney. Getting itchy feet, call Keith. Wild West builders. We might be cowboys, but we build it to code. These continued in the same vein until a professional voice announced. Divinity Incorporated, we fuel the future. Remote security jobs available with a controlled audience. Majority of the role consists of WFH. Please call in to attend your induction day at Div Incorporated. Minimum pay of $500 per Earth day worked. I could tell why this caught Tony's attention. The role sounded perfect. I expected to be watching some warehouses on my laptop and making easy money. The term Earth Days threw me off a little, but the language the kids use these days was something I couldn't keep up with. I decided as I rounded the corner to my house that I would stop by in the morning and see if they have anything for me. Your destination is on the left, the sat-nav called out. I turned down the lane towards the brilliant white building. The lane was shrouded by trees. Beautiful autumnal leaves scattered the ground. I already had a good feeling about this place. As I approached the car park, it struck me with how many people were working here. There were hundreds of cars and I had never heard of Divinity Incorporated before. I parked and made my way across to the entrance. The building seemed to glisten in the low-rising sun. The steps up the entrance looked like marble. The double doors opened by sensor as I approached and entered. The reception area was a vast room with high ceilings. Glass bowl lights hung down to illuminate the floor. There was a long reception desk to the left of the entrance. Behind was a wood-paneled wall accentuated with pictures of smiling people in suits. A voice called out from the reception desk, "Welcome to Divinity Incorporated, are you here for the induction day?" The voice came from a beautiful brunette barely visible behind the giant desk. "I am." I managed to stutter out. She grinned. "My name's Annie, it's nice to meet you." She paused, waiting for me to introduce myself. "Tommy," I managed. That Irish accent had caught me off guard along with her striking appearance. "Man, a few words, Tommy," she laughed. "I'll need you to sign this before you head in. Nothing major, just a quick non-disclosure agreement. We deal with private documents and data protection is a big thing nowadays." I knew I had to pull this back. I had come across as a stuttering buffoon. I put on my best smile and signed the page as I looked her in the eyes. "You definitely make it easier to come into work every day," I said as I attempted a laid-back approach of leaning against the desk. She smiled at me with flirtatious eyes until she noticed I had finished signing the page. She grabbed the sheet and filed it away in the drawer with one precise movement. Only then I realized I didn't even read it. "This way please," she said with her back to me, already heading down the hall. She led me through a maze of corridors. Each door showed offices full of people monitoring screens with great intent. I couldn't see what the few closest to the doors were watching, but they were all as focused. We went down a set of stairs and into a large circular room. The wall of the room was littered with outlines of doors, each one with a bronze placard above the outline. I could read the closest two on my left. One said City Suburbs, the other said Wastrel Site 3. In the middle of the room there was a huge double-sided screen that displayed what looked like a task board like that you would find in any call center. The top task said, "Look for the Paladin Town Hall, 5 hours £15,000 and 40k bonus if found." The bottom of the list had 10 or so duplicates of Shift Security Wastrel Site 2-$500 5 hours. Below the screen was what you'd expect to see in a secret armory of a hero in the movies. Racks of rifles, rows of shotguns, handguns of all makes and blades of all lengths. A broad man with a stiff posture stood beside the armor. He had the air of a military general. A stiff iron collar and spit-shine boots. His black hair, flecked with gray, gave him the appearance of a man who has seen many seasons. "Good morning, Mr. Armstrong," Annie called out as we approached. Mr. Armstrong was the main guy here at Divinity Incorporated. He extended his hand and shook mine with one powerful shake that nearly put my shoulder out of my socket. "Gerald," he said as I mentally assessed the damage to my unsuspecting joints. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Tommy," he said, giving me a once-over. I realized I hadn't told him my name yet, but let the thought slide. "It's nice to meet you too," I replied, trying my best to put on a professional front to my potential employer. We had the usual formalities of a job interview. I told him about my previous experience in security and time in the military. He was interested in my combat experience, which judging by the arsenal behind us wasn't too much of a surprise. "I'm going to give it to you straight, Tommy, this job isn't your usual security role. These gateways here lead to hell," he said as casually as if he was discussing the weather. He went on to describe how scientists were accelerating particles in the Large Hadron Collider and a miscalculation led to a gateway being opened to hell. Hadron emitted linear location. He described how they have been traveling here for the best part of 5 years. Building research sites across the explored regions of this place where they can extract resources and data. However, all this research needs to be funded, he said, gesturing to the monitors. "We have a very exclusive client base who pay very generously to watch the daily shift. We have body cams, which live stream from each person in hell." "So what's that about the Paladin?" I asked, unsure how I was taking this conversation serious. "Those are tasks you can elect to follow to earn some additional income. A little too risky for a rookie of the company," he said. I later found out the Paladin is a religious fanatic who entered hell to preach the gospel to the non-believers, as he calls them. He jumped with a Bible in one hand and a 12-gauge in the other. He took off his camera as soon as he got through and hasn't returned topside since. The ever-watching eyes are obsessed with his crusade across the land of the damned and pay handsomely for any content including him. "Look, I appreciate you taking the time to see me today, but this all sounds a bit crazy," I said. As I turned to leave, Gerald announced that I wouldn't be going anywhere in a hurry. When I questioned him on this, he informed me that the cute little receptionist is a qualified psychiatric doctor and I had signed a form to admit myself into her care for my own safety. It's always the short ones. I cursed as I realized this man wasn't going to let me go spilling the beans on their operation. "It's best if you just get your induction started," he said as he pressed a button on a keyboard which burst one of the outlines on the wall to life. "I'd grab something from the rack if I were you." As I stepped through, the gateway, shapes began to materialize in front of me. I could see two men standing over some maps spread out along a wooden desk. The edges were held down by a stapler and a handgun. Bullets were lying loose along the map. One of the men was pointing towards a spot with several red X's in close proximity. I cleared my throat to let them know I was there. "Do you think I'm fucking blind, rookie?" the man on the right yelled. "No sir," I snapped. His tone brought me straight back to my days in service. This balding, scrawny man who was barely 5'6" on his toes had the air of authority that demanded respect. "Do you see me cutting fucking ribbons or kissing babies on the forehead? I earn a living just as much as the next guy. You can call me Mark." Mark taunted. He gave a slight grin towards the others. Mark was a decent guy once you got to know him, bit rough around the edges. He introduced me to the guys I would be working with. They went by Roscoe, a tall man with a buzz cut that made him look quite formidable, Ian, a young man who looked fresh out of high school, and Evan. He had a warm smile which was a contrast to his features. He had burn scars to the left side of his face down to his hands. His skin looked tender and sore. "Nice to meet you, rookie," Evan said as he shook my hand. "If you make it through the job until the next guy comes along, you can let us know your real name." I laughed, but deep down I knew he wasn't joking. Our tour of the building was same as any workspace walkthrough. They showed me the workspace, kitchen, bathrooms and where the extra supplies were for the security staff. Once we went outside, that's where everything changed. The scenery was indescribable. "Welcome to hell," Roscoe announced. We stepped out through the doors of the watchtower which overlooked the research labs. The landscape was barren other than our compound. The area we were located in looked like a desert of burnt red sand, the skyline looked to be ablaze and an ominous wind swept across the vast open space. I noticed an obelisk-like structure 200 feet from the main gate. "What's that?" I asked, pointing in the direction of the misshapen structure. "Transport stones," Ian said. "There's hundreds of them spread across this place. They can open portals for the natives to travel through. Only stay active for a short time so only a handful of the locals can make a break on us." "Why don't we just destroy it then?" I asked, unnerved. I hoped they didn't hear the tremble in my voice. Mark put his hand on my shoulder a bit too forcefully. "We know exactly where they will come from. Besides, if we close their portals, that will just bring the attention of the generals on us, and you really don't want to have a run-in with one of them. Not too many can say they came across a general and made it back topside," Mark informed me. I spent the first half of my shift with Evan. He introduced me to the workers on site and told me some of the history of this location. Waste Drill Site 3 was founded 6 months ago. They are currently excavating minerals and a form of energy which is 10 times more powerful than the fossil fuels on Earth. He also told me more about the people watching our shifts. "Most important thing is to keep away from any bodily fluid from the locals. It can infect you and turn you into one of them," Evan said. He poured me a cup of coffee from the pot he had freshly brewed. "It's an infection we call the rot. Those that fully transform are called remnants. Tough sons of bitches. If any of us perish out there, you toss one on these on us," he continued. He passed me a small container which he told me would light a body up real good. Apparently the rot could be treated, but the medicine was extremely expensive. Employees of the company got it for a fraction of the price. The infected skin and bones would melt and fuse together in a demonic form. They gained extreme strength and powers still vastly unknown. They seemed to have a high standing in the local population, and there were often task forces sent to take out any that didn't get burned before they turned. As I began to ask Kevin more about the remnants, the room erupted in a blaring of sirens. A voice announced over the intercom of a level 2 treat with potential to breach. The team rushed out of the watchtower as I followed behind. I'm not ashamed to admit it here, but the terror was building inside of me. As I looked out at the fragment of reality that had split not 200 feet in front of me, I felt my blood turn cold. The world seemed to quiver as an impossible large ape-like creature with sharp pointed spikes protruding from obtuse angles marched towards our electrified gate. Demonic-looking humanoids encircled it like an unholy procession of carnage. "Look alive, rookie, we have a date with the devil," Mark roared over the commotion. The enormous monstrosity reached the gate and barreled into it. It crumpled under his weight, but the extreme voltage flowing through its body made it blister and smoke. Heads down, someone shouted from behind. I couldn't move, these things were about to get in and I couldn't move any fiber of my body. The giant creature exploded, sending the spikes hurling in all directions. One exploded through the wall to my left and struck a worker in the gut. His entrails leaked out around the edges of the spike and his skin started to bubble and turn a sickly gray. His screams engulfed my thoughts and the darkness overtook me. I woke up to Mark standing over me as I lay in a bed in the staff living quarters. He looked battered and bruised but very much alive. "Take it easy, rookie, you have had a lot to process on your first day." I sat up in the bed and noticed I didn't have any clothes on. "What happened to my clothes?" I asked, very much aware that someone had removed them when I passed out. "You pissed yourself, rookie, we couldn't leave you marinating in it. Don't worry, it's like a rite of passage for us here at Div Incorporated. Get dressed and head home, you had an eventful first day," he said with a smile. As I tried to get up from the bed I noticed a sharp pain piercing my side. As I looked to the source of the pain I noticed a patch of my skin was gray and withered. Mark noticed the panic on my face. "Not to worry, the rot won't kill you. Well, not as long as you keep coming back to work," he said with a devilish grin.